Hi again, it's Mrs. Wallace. I'll just kind of finish a little bit of Byzantine social system and then also maybe a little bit with Byzantine religion. So some of the things to kind of be aware of in terms of the way the Byzantine society operated. It really was a wealthy society. So you had this urban area. Of course, you also had a great deal of agricultural lands. Most of the Byzantine Empire is agricultural, but Constantinople kind of stands out as this really urban city, and this is where a lot of the wealth is coming in. And there's a great deal of activity, and one of the things that was common was similar type of leisure to the Roman Empire, and some of this included chariot racing. So there was a very large hippodrome that was built, kind of like maybe our modern day, sports matches or whatever, but a big part of the activity was to engage people in this kind of competitive match and maybe take people's minds off of some of the political issues or political woes and whatnot. And during Justinian's reigns, these two sides that were often in competition, the Greens and the Blues, did actually join together to refute some of the things that Justinian was doing. He had some policies where he was attempting taxes, and he was doing some things that affected kind of the rich versus the poor. And the Greens and the Blues together stopped the rivalry and tried to protest against Justinian. And this is the occasion where, he kind of left thinking that he was going to stop being the emperor, and his wife Theodora talked him into staying, and he used the military to actually execute a good number of the protesters. So Justinian was known for being ruthless, and his role as empire kind of enabled him to do that. And this particular riot was seen as something that had a big effect. This is an image of the Hagia Sophia, this very large-scale church that Justinian had built when Constantinople was later attacked in the 1400s by the Ottomans. They actually did turn the Hagia Sophia, which was a Christian church, into a mosque. So for many years, the building survived as a mosque. Today, it is still available to visit. It is currently a museum, and some of the Islamic lettering that's available in the mosque is done over some of the older icons that would have been painted in the Hagia Sophia. So there hasn't been any taking out of anything that has been kind of overlaid, but both kind of cultural pieces of the Hagia Sophia are there. There is a very strong education system in Byzantine, something that is available almost from the state. So schools were all about training members of government to be not only really literate in Greek, but also to be informed so that they would understand things like weights and measures and other types of things that they might need as background information. There was a great deal of tutoring and some belief that even upper-class girls might have been able to be educated in the Byzantine Empire. And there was a very big focus, curriculum-wise, on the humanities and on classical ancient Greece. So they're really, some of the Greek literature or some of the ways that maybe classical Greek philosophy would be embedded as a cultural touch point in Byzantine is kind of important. Of course, the Byzantine Church is also something that's really significant, and I'll touch on a few of these things. You can do additional research in class, but the Church is essentially very tied to the imperial government, but underneath the emperor, and the way that for some time the Byzantine Church was part of the Christian church and in the same exact church as the church in Rome. So the church that Charlemagne is part of is the same church that the Byzantine leadership and the Byzantines are part of. There are, however, some cultural differences. So practice of the Byzantine Mass tends to be changed up a little bit. Some of that is due to language and cultural differences. Also, there become some stress points where the Byzantine version of Christianity starts to become a little bit different. And one example of that is iconoclasm. There is an emperor by the name of Leo III. Leo III bans icons, and icons are religious imagery, almost like religious portraits that would honor particular divinities or perhaps saints, or perhaps where Christians see Jesus as being divine. Some of that would be illustrated in an icon. Some of the need for a ban came from a variety of different sources, maybe some kind of contributions from Islam, where any type of imagery is generally not allowable. Imagery of, say, the Prophet Muhammad, or imagery of any type of divine figure, not something that Muslims generally do. Maybe there was some influence there. Maybe it had to do with some of the things that the political was trying to just squelch down on the church practice. But this ban became unpopular in Byzantine. There are all of these smashing of icons, going into churches and ripping down some of the icons or smashing the ones that were on the walls, and lots of people pushing back against that. This also creates tension in the West, because the West becomes very critical. So the Pope in Rome becomes very critical of the activity that's happening in Byzantine. It creates a little bit of a disjointedness between the two. Ultimately, and this is an example of an icon, so you can kind of see on the right, and Byzantine art tends to look very much like this, and to this day is very filled with images of icons. It's kind of like a visual prayer, so there is a kind of religious aspect to the creation of iconography. Monasteries do serve a purpose in Byzantine, very much like the church in the Western Europe. The thing it's a little bit different with the monasteries, they're not really serving as like a place where lots of scribing happens or intellectual activities. Generally, it is a place of a lot of asceticism, hardcore prayer. This is really quite a few. And the reforms tend to be different. The monasteries in Byzantine fall under reforms of Saint Basil, whereas in Western Europe you see, the Benedictine monks and reforms that have a little bit different of a flavor. A lot of the reforms are about clearing out corruption, making the practice of monasteries much more about religion and not about wealth or land or other types of things. In time, the Great Schism will occur, and this is really the breakup between what becomes the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. The Eastern Orthodox Church will really represent Christianity in the Byzantine Empire, and the Roman Catholic Church will represent the Christian Church in Western Europe. And this schism occurs in 1054, when there becomes kind of a joint or mutual excommunication between two leaders of each of those churches. And the way Byzantine is set up, there's a large number of bishops in different cities throughout Byzantine. So you might have a particular bishop of Antioch or a bishop of a particular city. And the Byzantines see the Bishop of Rome, sometimes referred to as the Pope, as really one of the kind of an equal with the other bishops. There's not really this sense that the Pope has got additional kind of ways in which to connect with higher powers. And on the Roman Catholic side, that becomes very, very different. The Pope is actually seen in some cases not only above political or secular figures, but also is above bishops in any other city. So the Pope in Rome's kind of power becomes very questioned by the Byzantines and very defended by the Roman Catholic Church. And that's a big part of the reason for the breakup. There's also doctrinal differences. So issues of whether or not priests can be married, for example, is one way to look at it. To this day, individual priests within the Eastern Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox religion can be married, have children, have families, and it's something that's acceptable in that religion. Roman Catholic priests, on the other hand, take a vow to be celibate, so they essentially kind of marry the church and aren't allowed to get married and have families. That's something that has still kind of stuck around. So there's a great deal of the way in which masses are done differently in both of those places, languages spoken. The Roman Catholic Church kind of revolves around classical Latin, whereas the Eastern Orthodox Church will revolve around Byzantine religions, primarily Greek, and later we'll see Russian and some other languages. But in any case, that's a little bit about the Byzantine Empire. Have a good night.